I think this is the best astrology birth chart reading I've ever received. You're really, really good at this. I'm sure you know that, but I just wanted to echo that. As somebody who has received many a birth chart reading, the accuracy and the nuance is exceptional.
Did you realize I was 19?
No, I did not know that. The fact
Yeah.
that you tell me when you were in high school is so heartwarming to me and makes me feel so good. It always just hits so hard because I shoot so much stuff right here from this corner and you're just like, well, hope somebody listens to it, you know? So I'm like, oh, knowing that little high school Eli was listening is like just chef's kiss.
Yeah, I think I was 16 or something like that. I'll have to go back and look at my search history.
All right, y'all, welcome to the In the Stars podcast. As you have heard, I have the wonderful comedian Rachel LaForce on the show this episode, and I am so excited. I'm so excited to bring her on because she has been somebody who I think I found in 2022, 2023. I'll have to go back and look at my journals and search history. Can't pinpoint exactly when I did, but I found her because I was going down some spiritual rabbit holes, and I had come across some people, and she was in the network, and I was like, oh, she seems interesting. She seems cool. Let me look at what she does. And so I started listening to the Rachel LaForce show. Now Healing is Hilarious. And then I also started just kind of following her, kind of watching the reels she would make, watch the content she make. And now she has a TED Talk out, The Lightning Method, which we talk about a little bit too. And I definitely would recommend everyone go watch because it is truly transformational. Like, you get to watch someone tell their transformation journey. I love listening to transformation journeys. You know, last week's episode, I shared my transformation journey with coming out. You know, some people have multiple transformation journeys. Some people's whole life is a transformation journey. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say everyone's life is a giant transformation journey. We get from point A to point B, and how we get there is what we live. Now, yes, there are certain cycles that we have to work with. You know, we can't control how many hours there are in a day, just like we cannot control some of the transits that we have coming up, but we can control how we navigate them and how we meet our circumstances. That's part of the mission of what I do. It's part of why I do astrology. It's not only just to transform myself, because you know, when you're learning astrology, you kind of have to sit with the brain melt. But also at the same time, I love helping other people live the lives that they want to live, get to living the lives that they want to live. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start us off with the word of the week. This word of the week is going to be a little interesting because it's something that I don't think that a lot of people really talk about in a nuanced way. And it's usually good or bad, or there's no way that a lot of people look at it from a nuanced lens. And so I'm really excited to talk about it. And then we're going to get straight in with Rachel. This week's word of the week is aspects, okay? So that's going to be your conjunction, your sextile, your trines, squares, oppositions. And then if we're talking about minor aspects, your quincunxes, your semisextiles, your biquintiles, all those things. But I don't really use those because the basic aspects are enough. I can see enough with the basic aspects, you know. That's one thing, too, that I've noticed is that a lot of astrologers go into being like, oh, this is semisextile, or oh, this is biquintile. You know, that's like fighting over breadcrumbs, in my opinion, because, like, there's so much that you can see in a chart without looking at those. And plus, looking at those, it's like, you know, it's just arrow pointers anyway. So it's just re-showing you everything else that the major aspects are already showing you. So that's why I don't stress on the minor aspects that much. But like the basic aspects, so your conjunctions when two planets are sitting right next to each other, or on top of each other, actually, for that matter. And then you have your square where they're 90 degrees, or your sextile where they're 60 degrees, or when they are in trine, which is, I think, 120. You know, there's so many basic aspects. I think there's five. And a lot of times people think, oh, trine, sextiles, good. Conjunctions, squares, oppositions, bad. The problem with that is that good and bad is relative. What might be good for one person might be bad for another. It depends. Now, granted, I will say this. If you are somebody who is so into conformity, where you're like, I have to live this type of way, I have to be a man of God or a woman of God, and I have to, you know, like, yeah, I would interpret the aspects that way. The conjunctions are probably not going to be all that great for you. The oppositions are probably not going to be that great for you. The squares probably also not going to be that great for you. In fact, those opposition squares and conjunctions are probably going to actually pressure you to loosen up a little bit. The trines and sextiles will show where the energy is flowing naturally. So, in a way, yes, if you are a super traditional person and you're not really wanting to transform in any such type of way, you're that conservative. Not necessarily conservative in the political sense, but conservative as in like the you do not want to. And that's kind of the lens through which I'm trying to come at this with, is that when you recognize and you loosen up a little bit, you recognize that you're not like some person who's never going to change. You're some stagnant being, right? Which is why mundane astrology usually is mostly negative, because you're dealing with static things. A nation has a whole bunch of people, and a nation cannot think on its own. It's not its own. It doesn't have its free will, because it's the collective free will of everyone, right? Or a company, same thing there. Or a coffee cup. Like if you were to pour a coffee cup and pull the chart for that, it doesn't have free will. It can't make its own decisions. And that's why you start seeing that comes in negative, because it's like the ultimate conservative. Like it is static. It if you just let it sit there, it can't make its own decisions. But you can. Which is why you can actually flow with the energy and make those transits and those aspects not all that terrible. So just food for thought. So let's go and get right into the show with Rachel.
All right, y'all. I am here with Rachel LaForce. She's a comedian and someone who I have been listening to for probably at least 2 or so years. I found her when I was going through some spirituality rabbit holes on the internet in high school, and I can tell you, Rachel is fantastic. I think you all will love what she has to say and also her takes on some things. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Yeah, so kind of tell us a little bit about what is it that you do? What is your specialty? Like, what is it that just gets you going, what lights you up?
Oh gosh, this is such an interesting question. It should be an easy question. It's still not an easy question for me. I mean, by trade, I'm a comedian, I'm a podcaster, I'm a media entrepreneur, but behind all of that is my spiritual lens. So everything I'm sharing through comedy, through socials, when I do big keynote speaking, behind all of that is always my spiritual lens. So I think definitely my niche is the intersection between comedy and content and spirituality. And obviously there's lots of folks that are doing that, but I really stand by, it's not about like making something funny. I think it's really the lens of healing is hilarious, because I mean, I don't have to tell you, the world feels like it's on fire, and that's overwhelming. And, I always try to be aware of not doing any sort of like spiritual bypassing through the comedy of it. But I think really bringing a lot of us to the reality of this could be happening for us, but we just have to stay in it, and we have to stay in it together. And I think that comedy is really one of the most spiritual things that we have, because it's a vehicle for connection.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually made a couple TikToks about this, during the summer, and I kind of was trying to make the point in that a lot of times people do spiritual bypass a lot of the hard feelings, because they're like, oh, this is low vibe. I can't feel this way. I need to like go higher. Comedy isn't really about that, because if you look at really good comedy, it goes straight for the pain points. It's like saying, yeah, this is here, but how can we turn this from trash to treasure? And comedy is a great way. Like, yes, you go straight for the pain points, but here's the thing: you offer a new perspective that is in such a way that kind of turns it all into something that's like, oh, maybe that wasn't as bad as I was making it out in my head, or which kind of makes it funny, or like, oh, that's an interesting take on it. That's kind of hilarious, and that's kind of how a lot of comedy works. And so I think it's great that you address it that way. And it's not spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is if you just were to be like, oh, can't feel that way, can't do it, nope, tunnel vision, gotta stay positive all the time. That's not realistic, and in fact, that's actually just as, to me, that's just as low vibe as trying to constantly stay down in the dumps and not try and get any better because you just feel like life is just happening to you. So it's the same vibration to me, at least. So yeah, that's really cool that you do that. So how did you get into spiritual lens comedy? Like how did life happen in
Because
such
my
a way
life
that
fell
kind of
apart.
led you down that path?
Such a great question. This is actually kind of the kernel of all of my work. So within the work that I do now, and like I own a creative agency and studio with my husband as well. And that's where like a lot of our creative work comes from. And so when I'm talking about the work, I'm really talking about what I'm doing on stage, what I'm doing in boardrooms, what I'm doing on my podcast. And it's really about transformation. All of my things are about the transformation process. And it's not about like, put all of your worries in a bowl and light it on fire and bury it in the earth. And listen, and I'm here for all that. If you're doing it right now and listening to this, keep burying it. Okay, baby. But the things that we're really seeking are just practical tools. They're just practices, and that's what makes them hard, because it's easy for us to think thoughts and prayers. It's easy for us to think, I'm going to put it on a vision board and then it's going to happen. And oh, it didn't happen. So it didn't happen for me because of this thing, or that's why I'm not worthy. And like, our brains are designed to spot patterns. And so it will believe what it is that we feed it. And I know from experience that feeding it what it is that you need and what's the most supportive for you is unfortunately the most difficult thing, right? Like, unfortunately, it's a lot harder. Like, people would be shocked. It's actually easier to be sad or anxious than it is to work your way out of those. And again, I'm talking about generalized anxiety here. So, use your best judgment. But so my work came to be, my background is in comedy and theater and acting, and I did movies and television in Los Angeles and had built this whole career. And then my life came tumbling down in a series of events. So, it was like I pulled the tower card 3 times was basically what my 2018 was for me. And I went through a really rough breakup. I got sober on accident. That's right. I got sober on accident because I broke up with somebody. We had to live together. And I was like, well, I'm certainly not going to drink while I'm here. This will be too dramatic. And so I didn't drink. And we lived together, I think, for 50 days, 50. That's a long time to live with somebody that you're not talking to. And well, also 50 days is a long time to sit with your feelings when you haven't sat with them and you're sitting through one of the most destructive things in your life. And I was about 30 or 31. So definitely at that time we were like, I'm supposed to have it together, which, like, by the way, that time never comes. Okay. Whether you're 45 and listening to this or 17, let's release that idea that you at some point will know what it is you're doing. And
it just kind of comes. It just comes when it needs to come. Like that's
sure.
You just kind of have to let it happen, and trying to force it to happen is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's just not going to work. Yeah.
Amen. It's like trying to catch a bus in Chile. Like, it's going to come. We don't know what time it's coming.
Up and down escalator.
Yeah. There's not a bus schedule, but you just wait and find out. Yeah. And you're totally right. Of like, when you're staying with life will stay with you. Is how I feel. Of like, it's when we try to go, beyond where we are or back to where we used to be that we kind of trip ourselves up. And so during that time was a real spiritual awakening for me. And I was just awakening to like, oh, there's all of this childhood sadness that I never dealt with. There's a lot of isolation that I never dealt with. There's these, low self-esteem, like all of these things that I had kind of, I tell people this all the time, is most of the time, and those of us that need a lot of healing is for those of us that are just doing fine. Like I speak to a lot of people that exist in a middle bottom, because we all glorify big T trauma, which, as we should. Let's keep having those conversations. But or not but, and also there's a lot of folks that are walking around at half mast. And the reason for that is because we're like, well, it's okay that my parents were kind of mean to me, or, oh, it's okay that I didn't, my parents didn't accept me for this thing, or I lost this person, or we rationalize things to be able to cope. And that's good. That's what we should do. And also take a look at them and know that we are worthy and divine, and we can make amazing things happen and live a life that really is fulfilling. So that's where I was. And just through, the years and slow process, and then I was with my now husband, but we had just started dating, and he's also a stand-up comic. And I had this huge meltdown because I did a show, and it just went fine, which was very bizarre for me because I was used to being a superstar. And I was like, what is happening? And really what was happening was that what I was used to saying and talking about on stage was no longer true for me. And it was this huge fear of, oh my God, did I choose to get sober and heal my life, or be in a process of healing my life and making better choices? And I lost my superpower, which is being funny. And it took me a long time, and I'm still, processing through this. And again, that integration of what does it mean to be both wise and be a teacher, and also be willing to be the jester at the same time, and being willing to like offer the medicine in a different vehicle, because the landscape of social media with like social wellness and spirituality, there's not a lot of room for that. It's a lot of like, we're sitting down and we're meditating and we're doing this and we're grounding and take your shoes off. And there should be all of that. And also people are behind on bills. Shit's going off. People are getting ripped off the street. Other people are losing their housing. There is insane tragedy that's happening around us all the time. And we may not have the bandwidth or the space or the money to go to Bali for a healing retreat and and it's like, I also don't think that you need all of that. I think that
you don't need all of that. Like, it's a good supplement. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a good supplement. It's a great way of facilitating spirituality and also mindfulness, and to some extent or another.
Totally.
It's great at doing that. However, it's like you can't just go around expecting if you stick a crystal up your ass that it's going to solve all your problems. Like at some point, like you were saying, I really, really liked where you were going with practical spirituality, because that is something that I've been like, yes, this whole time, because I am not, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like super woo-woo, okay? Like, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to, take my sage and my incense everywhere, and just I always have a crystal on my arm. Like, I'm not really that way. I just kind of go where I feel like I need to go. Like, if I feel drawn to a crystal, I'll put it in my pocket. If I want to go out and do a something with yoga, I'll do it when I feel like it. But I'm gonna guarantee you right now, I don't even remember the last time I've done yoga or I've done like an actual sit down meditation thing, because most of my spirituality comes from talking with other people. Comes with going out and sitting in the office hours of one of my professors, or going and doing a reading for somebody, and watching the aha moments happen. Those kinds of things are, to me at least, they spiritually nourish me on the daily. And it is those practical things just like that. And so it doesn't have to be, you have to fill your whole room with incense smoke. I mean, it can if you like the smell of incense, but I don't know about you. I don't really like it. So,
I love everything you're saying. Sorry, I'm like so lit up by it. Of like, I always say that it's like the most practical is the most spiritual, right? How we do one thing is how we do everything. And, spirituality, the divine, as I see it, like, can and should be found in everything. It should be something that you carry with you. People should see you and be like, oh, she's different. Like, there should be a way in which you get to, especially for those of us that are healing from shame or from you're too much or don't do this or don't stand out. And then meanwhile, people are sitting in church singing songs about like this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And it's like, where is the disconnect that's happening between what it is that we're telling people that they should do and how everybody is walking around? And that's really what that transformation process is, of what I want to offer people, of like, you in fact can # live your best life, and whatever that means to you. And that may simply be that you come to the conclusion that you are enough. And that,
Absolutely.
and being able to get to that place, my whole body's lit up, of being able to get to that place of like peace and well-being and mindfulness and rest is all we can ask for. And I agree with you. If you get that way through, lighting sage every morning, or you get that way through, conversations with your neighbors, or you like, however your vehicle is, and we're all different. We've all had different experiences. We're all in different frequencies. So what we're attracted to is going to be different, right? And I just find that I've tried a lot of different ways of being, and I've tried a lot of different ways of teaching. And I just keep coming back to that the best way that I know how of what I'm here to offer is offering that through, laughter is connection and practical tools.
And comedy is really something that connects everyone. It can unite everyone. You can see in pretty much every good stand-up comedy session, or even really good, any good like sitcom or comedic show, you can see the discussions in the audience, or the people who are watching it at home or online. You can go onto Facebook and see what's going on, or Reddit, and it's bringing people together who otherwise would not be communicating with each other. It's starting those conversations that otherwise would not be had. And comedy really I think it opens more doors than it closes. Now there are times where some people get a little butthurt whenever someone makes a joke about them. And I think that when you allow and you recognize, it's supposed to be comedy. It's not actually supposed to be like a ad hominem attack. It's just comedy. You laugh at it and you see the humor because you're like, oh yeah, that's a funny take on it. And you allow those doors to open. And it allows all those new conversations. It allows all those new pathways of thinking. It allows a lot more in than if you were to just keep those doors closed. And I think comedy, because it is something that everyone just likes to laugh. I don't know anyone that's just like, oh, I just want to be grumpy and crotchety all day. Like, I don't know anyone that's like that, because that would be such a sad, miserable life. When you allow those doors to open, you allow those new conversations, allow all those new things, you're able to also spiritually nourish yourself, whether you recognize it or not as such. Because I'm one of those people. I'm like, spirituality is a part of everyone's life. We all have part of ourselves that is, well, not even part of ourselves, like all of ourselves are connected to everything else that is, right? And if comedy is something that unites us all, is that not also spirituality, because it's connecting us to everything else? So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so wise. And I think that, like, sorry, so many thoughts at once. I'm like pulling them through.
I know, you're good.
I when I first started doing comedy, the goal was to get a really big laugh, right? Because what I love about comedy is it's a meritocracy. You don't have to do hoops and ladders and all these things. If you get a room of people to laugh, you're a comedian. You're funny, right? There's in all of the world, and there's all this gatekeeping and all these different things. Comedy is the one place, like, I go, I make you laugh, I'm funny. The end. I'm good at what I do, right? And there's safety there for me in a lot of ways, in the way that the world hasn't always felt safe for me in different capacities. And now it has shifted to where if I make a group of people laugh, it's, I'm not alone. Because laughter is connection, laughter is recognition. If I say a joke about Uber and everybody laughs, it's, oh, ha, 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 we've all been in Uber. We all know that point of connection. And so if I'm talking about anything pertaining to like healing or breakdowns or, traumas, or just, being a working mother, or any of these things that I talk about on stage in my podcast and in keynotes, and I make a group of people laugh, it is that feeling and that recognition of like, we're not alone. And, I always at some point, I always say that I feel like the mix of comedy and spirituality is kind of like if you're going to give medicine to a dog, they're not just going to take medicine out of your hand, right? You're going to put some peanut butter on it, or you're going to wrap it up in some bacon, and then you're going to give it to them. And I often feel that way through a lot of my work, which is like, we are so tired of being told that we're not doing it correctly. On the internet, everybody, it's just like, oh, you thought that this was the way to do it? No, you've been doing cold plunging. You're an idiot. You're supposed to be doing, it's like, oh, you thought chocolate was good for you. Now it's giving you cancer. Like everything is just, there's a hot take on everything. And I really try to be mindful of really telling people more of like, my dude, this is what worked for me. And maybe it's going to work for you, and letting it, and again, coming into it from a point of connection of like, here's what worked for me. And here's why it's practical and how it changed my life, and using my life as testimony. And hopefully through those specifics and through that humor, other people can see themselves and their testimony and their walk and parcel out for them what works.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love every bit of that because I see it too. Because we actually have, I believe it's next week. Yeah. Well, maybe the end of this week. It's one of those days we actually have Colin Jost coming on campus.
Oh,
And
fun.
yeah, and I'm like, we're just a little, not, well, we're not little, but we're just a 10,000 student university in Arkansas, and Colin
Where do you
Jost
go
is
to
coming
school?
here, and University of Central Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and he's coming here, and I'm like, I'm really interested to see, because I have a lot of friends who are on the school newspaper. Well, technically, I'm also on the school newspaper, but I have a class at that same time where they meet, so I have to like really play it weird. And so I'm really interested to see, and I'm going to kind of take this as like a social experiment, social observation. I want to see how, like the videos that people take, the kind of the way that campus is before and after, because this is like the first time we've had like someone like really like a big comedian come on campus,
Yeah.
at least since I've been on campus. And so I'm really interested to see how, like in real time, how that connection works on kind of a social level. So I'm definitely getting my pen and paper ready in
That's
that sense.
exciting. Are
Yeah,
you from Arkansas?
I am. I was born in Little Rock. Yeah.
Okay. You just have such a beautiful accent. That's where I was like, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I love it. Because I'm from Georgia. I'm in Georgia right now.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember you saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm always like, oh, well, I know that. I know you. Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think that, yeah, comedy just has that way. And I think that it's taken me a long time to find my place in all of this, and find out how I want to best communicate and the spaces that I want to do that, because I'm really shifting my life from this place of service to high service. Meaning, like, I feel like I've always been in service of people of like being agreeable, or, oh, I can make that happen, and overachieving. And in fact, that's not actually helping anyone. And it's certainly not helping me. And how can I move my life to this place of high service? Like I always tell people, I'm like, I'm not wise. I'm just an obedient channel. If I'm in prayer and I hear a lesson and I know that there's something worth sharing, like that's not mine. Like when people message me, they're like, oh my God, your podcast was so good this week. And obviously that feels great. Thank you for listening and, and being around, but also like, I can't take credit for any of that. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, that wasn't me. That was, what came through of this obedient channel and being able to share that. And really, I think that's helped me a lot with my self-esteem and my sense of self and sense of self-worth, is just kind of taking myself out of the equation. And again, it's not that spiritual bypassing, but it's really being like, you're not either that interesting nor are you that boring. Like we're going to pull it out and let's just make the work what it is and just get like fall in love with doing the work again and letting that be the driving force. And then I can just be me.
Oh, absolutely. Are you familiar with the medium John Edward?
No.
Yeah, so he's actually he has a show. I don't remember what his show was called, but I was listening to a podcast and he was the guest, and he said something that was really kind of magnificent to me. And that is that when you're doing spiritual work, whatever it is, and spiritual work can be, at least the way I interpret it, is spiritual work is whatever your calling is, whatever like when you are acting in your authenticity, it's your 10th house. It's your 10th house in astrology. And so like
Yep.
it's where you feel called. It's not necessarily your career. Ideally it is your career, because hopefully you do a career that's something at least kind of aligned with what it is that you feel called to do. But I think it was really important that he said that when you're doing spiritual work, that you have to at least have some amount of ego to say that you are doing the work, to
Right.
say that you are who you are. Because at the end of the day, your ego is survival. Is what keeps you alive. Ego's fantastic if you're being chased by a skunk and you don't want to get sprayed, right?
Yep.
That's ego in action. We like the ego in those times, but we also
Yep.
we don't want to have our ego take over every single part of our lives, especially if it's coming on the more receptive side of life, the more internal side, like where we don't have to always set up those defenses, where we can let those guards down. And so you have to have enough ego to say, yes, I'm me, I'm doing what I'm doing, but then also at the same time recognize that you don't always have to constantly be saying, I'm a professional at this. I know, more than everybody, or I'm such an expert, and try and do that, because that was actually a lesson that I had to learn this past year. And so I was like, because astrology is one of those subjects where you're like, there's not really like any credentials that you can just say like, oh, that makes you a professional. But there's also a lot of people who have credentials in certain fields who are not, who are kind of assholes as
Right.
well. So I'm like, you can't
Right.
really rely on credentials anyway. But I was really trying to figure out what is the balance between how much do I have to assert myself out there and how much do I have to just let things kind of happen. And so I was really trying to play around with that. And obviously there's fails. There's times where you're like, ooh, that was kind of a not great thing to say, right? But you learn in those moments where there's those ego imbalances, like where you recognize where you're kind of stepping a little too much into it, and where you might be need to pull back from. And so it's definitely a learning curve. It's definitely a learning curve. But recognizing that, look, I do spiritual comedy. I like it when people laugh. Yeah, that's ego. That's enough to get you doing what you're doing. And then also recognizing, hey, but there's also some other higher thing to this. Just like as an astrology, like hopefully it's mine. Like at least I try and help people as much as I can, because I really don't like it when I watch people suffer unnecessarily.
Yeah. And I
Especially if
think
I
that
can be like, hey, there's a different way. Like
totally,
let me show you in your chart. Like this is how you can actually get out of this rut. So
totally.
yeah.
And for me, I think that like the way to move with ego is like making it fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you can make the ego exists for a reason, it's like if it was all bad, this is not what you're saying. I'm just adding to the conversation of like, if ego was all bad, then hopefully, we wouldn't have it. But it's with all things, there's a duality. And then hopefully that balance lies in the middle. Because I'm also not saying like, excuse me, of like, oh, I've taken myself out of my work and I'm just so selfless. Like, no. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, bitch loves applause. You know what I mean? Like, don't like, let's be clear. But I think again, that's where the fun comes in. And when I know that I have enabled fun, when I know that I have given somebody an evening out where not only do they have fun in the moment, but hopefully they're going to be driving, to work or something. And they're going to be like, man, yeah, I really should think about that thing more. And I've left them with something, then I have done my job. And so it's almost like my fulfillment, like the more that I follow what I define as my divine assignment, right? Or one could say it's written in the stars. I have my midheaven is in Leo. It's very clear that I am, doing what was written in the stars for me to be doing. But when it used to be like, oh, if other people notice me or this or that, again, I was in Hollywood for a very long time. And of course, those things still exist. I am a human. You want to be liked. You want to be seen. You want to be enjoyed. But it's almost, there's a little bit this shift that's coming online for me, which is more of just like, are you having fun? Because everybody in the world could think you're amazing and you're crumbling underneath this thing and you're not having any fun. And life, and that doesn't mean that I'm always chasing like, let's just have, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old that I chase around half of the time. And I love them. They're fantastic. Not always fun. Okay. And so, it's not about that, but I think that's a way that I can kind of move with my ego is like, let's have some fun. I'm always like, not here for a long time, just here for a good time. And really being able to, as best I can, staying in that frequency. It's also like fun is attractive. Think about if you're at a restaurant or you're somewhere and you hear a group of people laughing, everybody looks over at those people. It's the same energy as a fight. If a fight breaks out, everybody's like, what's happening? Same thing. You hear people laughing or cutting it up, or somebody's dancing, they're filming something on the street, anything that feels sensational in that way. It also, moth to a flame, it draws our attention. And so for me, I cannot change the world on my own. I cannot combat all of the horrific things that are happening. I also have my own dismantling and growth edges and things that I continue to work through and grow. And, the best thing that I can do when I really start to get that, like, what is happening? This is all overwhelming. And, pertaining to the outside world of being like, well, what we do have control over? We do have control over having fun. We do have control over of continuing to remind people that they can also have fun. We have the, and really being able to tap into that power of play and reminding people, like, just how powerful it is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the goal. That's the goal.
All right, I want to come on just for a second. I know we're enjoying the conversation with Rachel. I know. She's so much fun. I get it. But I want to come on and say real quick, I do have a special discount for everyone, okay? You can save 20% on any astrology reading, which I now have updated my calendar, by the way. So, updated calendar. You can book now. You can book me. I'm not completely booked. So I updated it for September and October. So there are some days in there where you can definitely book with me if that's something you're interested in. You can save 20% by using the code SAVE20. Okay. I also have the code in the show notes and the link to book if that is something you are interested in. Now, it's also that time of the show where I give all of my Patreon supporters a shout out. So if you don't know what Patreon is, Starseek Astrology, which is my Patreon account, Patreon is a platform where you can go on and support what I do by giving a monthly pledge, or you can do a yearly thing. I think now I'm still trying to figure out how those are working. I know some people do gifts, like gift memberships to other people. I'm still also trying to figure out how that works too. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do. It's just a way to help support what I do, help support the podcast, so that way I don't have to run ads on here. And I always like to give all of my Patreon members a little bit of a shout out. So let's go ahead and give everyone who is a Patreon supporter a shout out. So we got Lori, Jen, Nicole, Glenn, Matilda, another Nicole, Issy, Denise, Kim, Kirsten, and Bethany. Thank you all so much for supporting. It truly does mean the world to me that I'm 19, I'm a college student, and there are people who want to support what I do. And there's also people who I can help out as well, because I love helping people just as much as I love just talking into the void and just seeing who's going to listen. There's that as well. So thank you all so much, and it truly does light my soul up. So let's go and get right back into it with Rachel. We actually talk a little bit about Rachel's astrology. I don't give her a full reading. In fact, I have the video version, the unedited video version of this segment, the complete unabridged, in the Starseek Astrology Patreon. So you can definitely look there. Patreon members got early access to that post, and we talk a little bit about her astrology, and she kind of gives her input and insights in it as well. So with that being said, let's go and get straight into it.
That's so funny. I guessed your rising sign. I figured as you were talking, I was like, oh. So, you are a Scorpio rising. So, you're really somebody... Oh, and you have Pluto sitting in your first house, too. So, you're really somebody who... People come across you as some sort of, like, change agent. Like you're someone that's constantly, like, initiating some sort of change. You're getting people thinking. With Mars in your third as well, you also kind of have that definite element of trying to communicate things to people in such a way that really gets them questioning to their very inner core what it is, that the messages that they have been telling themselves all their whole life that may just not be working anymore. Those kinds of things are all, like, completely natural for you. Like you probably even recognize for yourself that that's how things go on. So, and I saw it in your TED Talk, which, by the way, the lightning method, everyone needs to go check that out. That was actually probably one of the best TED Talks I've probably ever seen,
Oh,
because
thank you.
yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I've seen a lot of TED Talks, and I'm like, that is literally the most glib thing I've ever heard. I don't think I took away anything from that except that you knew how to talk. But then like yours actually was like oh, I was out in LA, my house burned down, I broke up, I got sober all on the same day. I was like, oh, good grief, like that's a lot of energy. And I'm assuming that was the 2018 thing you were talking about.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, there were definitely a lot of things in your life that definitely put you on, or that guided you. I'm not going to say that it forced you on this path, because I don't believe that the universe forces you to do anything, but it can sure as hell try and coax you and inveigle you as much as possible to be like, hey, you're falling short. Here's how you can go. Let's guide you right back on. And you can either take the hints or you cannot. And then that's kind of where fate and free will comes in. But for
Yep.
you took the universe's hint, being like, hey, hey, maybe there is something better. Maybe there is something better. And you never gave up hope.
Well,
And
I tell people all the time that half of where I got out of where I was at that time in 2018, and if you're interested of listening to it, you can go and listen to my podcast. There's episodes on it, and or go and watch the Lightning Method on YouTube. And I talk a lot about it, but it really was where I'm like, I was almost like an angry bird, where I was just like, I'm just going to stay in the air for like the sure will of like, fuck this, fuck it all. I just, and I tell people that, and especially with women or people that, were not taught healthy doses of anger, or anger was only explosive, or, it's this emotion that is so potent and powerful that we don't really have healthy versions of it in society, in a lot of our homes, etc. But yeah, I always tell people that. I'm like, I don't think that like there is, God or the universe that's sitting there and being, this huge amount of judgment. I think that the world is patterns. And I think that when all of that happened, I could have continued the pattern of like, well, fuck this, I'm just going to go drink because it's all of course I could have. Of course I could have. And I always say that the smartest part of me, and I'm still not sure where that voice came from, was like, I just want to do this differently. Like, what would happen? I don't always really savvy myself a super like curious person, but that was definitely the most curious I have ever been, of like, I mean, a literal like fuck around and find out, right?
yeah, for sure. And you also have an eighth house Venus, so I'm like, you also kind of profit off of that as well. Like you bring in resources, baby, by doing that. And so like by sharing your story, by sharing how you turned what felt like trash in the moment into something that is completely beautiful and not trash at all, actually. And so it's all about perspective and changing those perspectives in people and yourself. And you probably recognize as well that you get a lot of support from people, and you get a lot of your resources from people when you do share those stories, because you have a Gemini Venus in the eighth. So sharing your stories, communicating with other people, especially in your local community, you were very receptive to what your community was, or your local community, I should say, it was trying to say to you. And so I think that's really neat. That's a cool Venus placement, if you ask me. There's no bad placements. I'm one of those people in astrology. I'm like, there's no bad placements. There you may have some that might appear challenging to other people, but challenging and easy is relative. What may
Right.
be easy for one person may be challenging for another. What may be good for one person may be bad for another. And so therefore, I'm not an astrologer that's like, oh, this planet's in detriment, or oh, this planet's in X. I don't do that, because I think that that's kind of it's trying to make things fit societal norms. And
Sure.
some people just don't march to that beat, and they're okay with that. And so why
Yeah,
would I use that interpretation with them, if you know what I'm saying? And so
totally.
maybe for someone who is a person who likes to conform to society, this would be a terrible placement for them, because they would feel like, oh, I'm already feeling like this outsider. I'm not really getting along with anybody in my community or anything. But you're not someone who is really a conformist by any means. Like you're like, hey, I'm gonna march to the beat of my own drum, because that's where that's where my spirituality is calling me. That's where I feel guided, and I'm also helping people in the process. So it's either you're on board or you're not.
Yep.
And so, and that's really cool with that Scorpio rising as well, is that you're able to really show people, like being like, hey, like I have that persistence. I can show you. I can show you that there is a better way than just sitting in your shit all the time every day. You can always make that one decision that will get you to making other decisions that will help get you up and making and building the life that you see as worth living. And that's truly magical. And that's so funny because as I'm looking at your chart now, I'm like, I'm hearing everything that we talked about before, and I'm like, that's this in action. Yes, that's exactly what this is. And so, you being that Taurus sun as well, you are someone who is very, very good at sustaining your energy. Like, yes, you may have, like obviously your ups and downs at moments, and you really get a lot of your energy levels from not necessarily like you are definitely a people person, but whenever you need to shut off for a second, you're very good at being like, hey, nope, I need my me time right now. Can't do this right now. Like you're very good at doing that, but you're somebody who I think is a good ambivert. Like you get your energy levels from people, but you also give it to yourself too, and you really need that good balance between the two because that's also something that you probably also noticed throughout your life is that finding the balance for you is the challenge. But once you recognize that's what you need to do, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah, balance has been like a reoccurring theme in my life, my whole life. Like I could probably just like write a book on it. But that, I mean, even within my work, like the balance of like, I want it to be funny so it's impactful because I know that is one of my primary gifts. And also, it's not enough anymore for it to just be funny, like doing something for funny's sake. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it no longer fulfills me. It no longer hits that high service mark that I'm, looking to move my life towards. And that I also want it to be impactful. I want it to be truthful. I want it to be, like spiritual. I want it to be wise. But then I'm also like, sometimes if I'm just delivering something and it's like, this kumbaya spiritual moment, like that also doesn't necessarily feel great for me either. And it's always about kind of finding this balance. And I think even finding that balance between, like I've never been a conformist and I've been not necessarily like unapologetic about that, but I have been slightly insecure about it. And I think only now, I mean, that is the gift of getting older. One of the gifts of getting older, is at 39, I'm like, I've lived enough life where I'm like, none of this really matters in that regard. So like, I can actually do whatever it is I want to do. And so can everybody else. And so, continuing to find that balance and the balance of needing that alone time has been such a interesting challenge and struggle and growth point for me of being married and having 2 kids. Because I grew up an only child in a co-parented household. So when I was at dad's house, it was just me and dad. When I was at mom's house, it was just me and mom. So I always had that ability to like shut off and go within. And then, with being on the mic, so to speak, in every aspect of my work, and it's what I love and it's what fulfills me, but it's also draining. And so now coming home and having 2 amazing, healthy, beautiful children, but 2 healthy, amazing, beautiful children that move a lot and need mom milk, mom this, mom deep, and having to figure out, like one thing we say in our house a lot is like, hey, mom needs rest too. And really making sure that I'm reiterating that of like, I will go above and beyond to make sure that your needs are met. But there's a difference between your needs being met and then you just barking the same thing over and over again. Moms need rest too. So really finding that balance has always been an ongoing, pummel horse for me of figuring that out.
Yeah. And you probably noticed as well. Now this is something that I'm also looking at your chart as well, is that like I can tell, looking at your chart, you are meant to be in the public eye. You are someone who is meant to tell your story. You are someone who like you would feel depleted if you just kept that all to yourself. And because that's so, you have so much potential energy that like it needs that outlet. It needs that facilitation. Now, let's talk about your Mercury for a second, and that's kind of where I was hitting at with this. Like your Mercury is really what shows me. Like you get those lightning moments. Like you don't know when you start a podcast how it's going to end. It may go completely different from how you even planned on it starting. You're probably also someone who, like, when it comes to schedules, you keep in your mind, you're like, yes, I need a schedule, I need it, and I'm gonna have this very particular way of doing things. But you also recognize that there's also a fluidity that you need to add into it, and because whenever you may schedule something and you have this whole booked out calendar, you're like, this is gonna be so great. I'm not gonna be bored. I'm gonna have everything I need to do, because you're somebody who I think has a very hard time with being bored, because you're never bored. There's always something to do.
Yeah.
There's always something to do. And because you have such a busy mind. But here is kind of like where you're like, yes, I have this very busy mind, but I also really need a lot of that flexibility, because I'm going to have those moments throughout, every other day or every day or throughout the day even, where I'm going to need time to kind of withdraw for a second, acknowledge what's going on here, because sometimes you may just get those flashes of insight where you're like, oh, I need to step back for a second, write this down, or I need to go in and like entertain this thought for a second, and then I can come back into the moment and continue out my day. You kind of have to schedule those throughout the day too for yourself. And so that's kind of what's showing me here is like you're someone who that also makes you very good at stand up, because you can be in those moments and recognize, oh, that's the exact thing I need to say here. And that'll get the message across. That's kind of where this placement to me is really expressing, and I think this is fantastic for someone who is doing the work that you do. Because I know a lot of times people are like, oh, Uranus, that's where it is. Uranus is where you're going against the mold. I mean, yeah, kind of. It's also, people don't realize that Uranus is just the higher octave of Mercury, really. So it's where your Mercury is how you talk about what it is you're talking about. It's how you communicate. It's how you process information, how you deliver it. Well, Uranus is kind of that on a societal level. How does society communicate? How do you work on with society or against it? That's kind of where Uranus and Saturn are besties. People always kind of look at me weird when I say that, but Uranus and Saturn, because Saturn being establishment, Uranus being anti-establishment, both Aquarius and Capricorn before Uranus was founded were ruled by Saturn. And so they're besties. They may be different from each other. They may seem like polar opposites, but they're besties at the end of the day. They work with each other. And so the fact that you have a very strong Saturn and a very strong Uranus, and it's also working with your Mercury, shows me that you can find that balance between the two. Like when's the right time to say a message, or like when you're like, wait, hang on, I'm gonna save that for the podcast, or I'm gonna save that for this because that'll get the message across. Like you're very good at recognizing how you deliver. I think that's the word I'm looking for. You're very good at delivery, and that's what also helps make you successful. That's where you can recognize your communicative power, if you will.
I think this is the best astrology birth chart reading I've ever received. You're really, really good at this. I'm sure you know that, but I just wanted to echo that as somebody who has received many a birth chart reading. The accuracy and the nuance is exceptional. And you're right about I know that you're right. You're like, I know, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. But just for the people listening at home, delivery is so huge. And I think that's also the thing that separates, and I think the thing that I have really found, because I think for so long I have been looking for permission. It goes back to what you're talking about of that ego and finding what do I need to say? What accolades do I need? What certificates do I need so people take me seriously as an astrologer versus am I just allowed to be really good at this? Am I allowed to be, and finding that balance. And I think ever since leaving Hollywood, I mean, it'll be 3 years in March that we've been gone. And, COVID was before that. So really working, and it's, 5 years. It's a long time. That's a kindergartner. And
Yeah.
it's taken that process for me to own, oh, no one is going to show up and go, hey, you're really good at this.
All right, so like I said before, you can catch the full, unabridged, unedited version of this segment, the complete talk and conversation with Rachel and her astrology on the Starseek Astrology Patreon page. We go on for like 35 minutes. It was wild. It wasn't a complete reading, but we at least talked a lot about it because she and I could probably talk all day about astrology. We both love it. I find it fascinating. She finds it fascinating. I do it as a job, and so I just gotta say, well, I don't even view it as a job. I just love doing it. I love helping people with it, and to me, it's just something that really lights my soul up. And I hope that you can kind of see that in the segment too, because I just love talking about people's astrology, and I am very, very grateful that Rachel allowed us to have that conversation about her astrology to kind of show you all kind of how I approach astrology and how I can help people kind of validate their own experiences, but also at the same time kind of show them where their power lies. And so hopefully you got some out of that segment, and yeah, we're gonna go ahead and continue on with the episode.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was so much fun.
I'm just grateful to be here, and I appreciate the reading and being able to see me so clearly through those things and through those patterns. And I do appreciate the validation because I've definitely kicked up speed here, recently, and I can feel a lot of things that are quickly evolving. And I know there's actually a lot of things that are about to metaphorically and realistically come online for me. Some new things that we're launching and doing and stepping into that authoritative place more and more. And I'm excited.
Looking at your chart just by knowing a couple transits you have coming up, I think January, like right when it hits January 1, you're going to be a new person. Like you're going to feel a big rush. And it's probably, I think it is definitely something to do with comedy. I think it's definitely going to be something similar. I don't know if you have anything planned that far in advance yet, but just so you know, January 1, like that first like 2 weeks in January are going to be like a glow up, a big boom. And then you also have Jupiter that's about to cross your midheaven next year as well. So you're going to be leveling up. Like you're going to be really, really in the public eye too, because that's third house and 10th house. So yeah, for sure. So just you do have that coming up. But with that being said, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, or maybe they just want to see a lot of the work that you do? Like where can people go, or where can you direct people to those places?
Sure. You can check out my podcast. It's Healing is Hilarious with Rachel LaForce. It's available on every platform. I am on every social media platform as Heal Haha Pod. So you can find me. I am at Rachel LaForce on every other platform. So it's easy to find me. Again, you could go and watch The Lightning Method with Rachel LaForce. You can just type in The Lightning Method, Rachel LaForce. It's exactly how it sounds. RACHELLAFORCE. You can go and watch that. And for everything else, RachelLaForce.com.
Y'all know where to find her now. I would definitely recommend you go give her a follow. She has great little reels and great little shorts to watch as well. So you'll always learn something new watching or listening, whatever it is. It makes you think about life just a little bit differently. Or maybe a lot if maybe spirituality is something that maybe you're just now really facilitating. So it may come across as something that's like, oh my God, there's all this overwhelming stuff. But Rachel does a very good job of making it not as big, and you don't have to always stick. You don't have to go out and buy all these things and buy all these crystals and buy all these supplies to facilitate. Spirituality is you just being you. And that's what I really liked about your podcast, about your TED Talks, and about the work that you do, is that you recognize and you acknowledge all the time that spirituality is just being you. You don't have to get all these supplies. You don't have to get all these readings. You don't have to be getting all these new tarot decks and whatever and having to memorize the whole world. You don't have to do that. Just by being you in your present moment is enough. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was so much fun.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again sometime because this was truly a great conversation.
Hey, I'm available. I'm available.
So with that being said, thank y'all so much for listening this week, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.